We're going to move on to our forgiveness bhavana, our cultivation of forgiveness, based around sexual, our sexuality. I don't like to call it misconduct or illicit, because those words and concepts don't really fit it. It's sexual attitude, sexual behaviour that leads to avoidable suffering. And we're going to do the usual 3-part bhavana, but I wanted to give myself more time to actually go through the bhavana and not have to rush it to finish by the top of the hour. So hopefully it'll work out better this side of the hour. Jeff Oliver, in his book Forgiveness for Everyone, says, after we've practiced forgiveness deeply and in detail, we will experience 3 benefits. The first benefit is that old memories, bad memories, arise less frequently. The second benefit is that the old memories are less emotional and less intense. And the third benefit is that the old memories, they don't last so long. So we're going to do forgiveness bhavana now. I'm going to share my screen. And as always, I would recommend just to close your eyes and just let the words float over you, to get a sense how this works. So you can bring it to mind and use it in the future. Use it as you work your way through the forgiveness workbook. But if you are working with real examples, then it can't be stressed. Just use small injuries, examples of small injuries, petty misdemeanors, and we build up this forgiveness muscle till we get to the more problematic incidents and people. So we get ourselves comfortable in whatever situation we find ourselves in. Chairs, sofas, cushions. And always for these heart practices, we imagine that we're breathing in and out through our heart area. You can put your hand on your heart if that helps, or on your hand on your belly if that helps. And we can recite to ourselves, or as I say, just let the words flow. I ask others for forgiveness for whatever harmful things I have done, the mistakes, the failures and the wrongdoings that I have intentionally or unintentionally done with my body, with my words, or with my heart. I now remember how I betrayed you through my sexual misconduct. My actions born out of my desires, out of my anger, out of my fears, out of my confusion and not knowing. But that was who I was then. It's not who I am now, and it's not who I will be in the future. You have nothing to fear from me today. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of betrayal that I have inflicted upon you, I'm sorry. I forgive myself. For the harm that I caused you, knowingly or unknowingly, I am sorry. I forgive myself for the sorrow that I caused you. I am sorry. I forgive myself. I forgive myself now. Continuing to take deep breaths in and out through the heart. You might let yourself feel your sorrow and regret for your actions. As we check in with our heart center, we might note the feelings that we find there. Guilt or anger, conflict, shame, self-hatred. But maybe, just maybe, with practice, you'll find surrender or a skillful remorse and maybe some release. But whatever we find in our heart, we meet it with kindness, with compassion. What's the appropriate response? What would it feel like to let go of the self-view of offender? What would it feel like to drop our personal stories and our negative identities? How would we feel? Is it possible to let go of guilt and to let go of shame? The second direction of forgiveness is forgiveness for ourselves, for all the hurt and harm that we've inflicted upon ourselves. As we continue breathing in and out through our heart area, we can recite silently to ourselves. Excuse me. We can recite silently to ourselves. I ask for and I extend forgiveness to myself for whatever harmful things I've done to myself, the mistakes, the failures, the wrongdoings that I have intentionally or unintentionally done with my body, with my words, or with my heart. I now remember how I betrayed myself through my sexual misconduct. I remember how I let myself down through my thoughts, through my words, spoken or unspoken, and through my actions. My actions born out of my own desires, out of my own anger, out of my fears, out of my confusion and not knowing. But that was who I was then, not who I am now, and not who I will be in the future. I now ask for and I extend to myself a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself for not understanding. I forgive myself for the mistakes of the past. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of betrayal that I've inflicted upon myself. I offer myself forgiveness. For the harm that I caused myself, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer myself forgiveness. For the sorrow that I caused myself, I offer myself forgiveness. I wholeheartedly forgive myself. I forgive myself now. Take a deep breath in and out through the heart center, and let yourself feel your sorrow and your regret for your thoughts, your words, and your actions, and how they've caused you so much pain and sorrow. Check in with your heart center. Note any feelings that are there: resistance, conflict, guilt, shame, anger, self-hatred. But maybe you find a recognition that we're only human, and surrender to this fact. And with the commitment not to repeat the mistakes of the past, maybe we can find some relief. Maybe we can find some release. Remember that in these instances, we're both the perpetrator and the victim of these particular hurts. Mindfulness means to remember what needs to be remembered, particularly remembering what is helpful, what is caring, what is wise, what is appropriate. What would it be like to drop our negative self-identities and replace them with an attitude of friendliness, with an attitude of kindness? So we might remember a phrase used in loving kindness practice: may I love myself just as I am, right here, right now. The last direction of forgiveness is to forgive those who've hurt or harmed us, those who have betrayed or abused us, those who've abandoned us. So we continue to breathe in and out through the heart area. And we can recite or just listen to the following phrases. As far as I'm ready, and as far as I'm currently able, I forgive you for whatever harmful things you have done. The mistakes, the failures, and the wrongdoings that you committed intentionally or unintentionally with your body, with your words, or with your heart. I now remember how you betrayed me through your sexual misconduct. Your actions born out of your desires, out of your anger, out of your fears. Your actions born out of your confusion and your not knowing. I have carried the pain and sorrow of your betrayals in my heart for too long, and now I put them down. Now I set you free. Now I release you. You have nothing to fear from me. for the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of betrayal that you inflicted upon me. I offer you my forgiveness. For the harm that you caused me, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer you my forgiveness. For the sorrow that you have caused me, I offer you my forgiveness. I forgive you now. Take a deep breath in and out through the heart area, and let yourself feel your pain and sorrow. Check in with your heart center and note any feelings that are there. The resistances, the blockages, the conflict, perhaps renewed anger, renewed hatred. It is possible that we may even feel guilty or shameful because of someone else's actions. In which case we must remember that this deserves our kindness and our self-forgiveness. Is it possible to let go of being a victim of these hurts, these betrayals? What purpose does this self-view serve? Does this self-view still help? Or does this self-view now hinder? What is the appropriate response? Remember, we can forgive, but we do not have to forget. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. We're not inviting people back into our lives. Forgiveness and justice can and should be applied together. Forgiveness is a process, not a single event. Sometimes this is a gradual process that requires patience and courage. A gradual process that cannot be rushed and it cannot be faked. So part of the Buddha's advice to the Kalamas, the confused villagers, can be summarized as live with a heart full of love, a heart full of compassion, a heart full of rejoicing, and a heart full of equanimity in every direction, above, below, across, everywhere, all around. Spreading a heart full of love, a heart full of compassion, and a heart full of rejoicing, and a heart full of equanimity to the whole world. Abundant, expansive, limitless, free of hostility, and free of ill will. Remember that it's not our fault. To be human is to crave, and to crave is to be human. Remember the distinction between guilt and a wise remorse, between getting stuck in the past and being free to move on. in holding with care our pain, our hurt, and our disappointments, in honouring our lost childhoods and our broken dreams, we might skillfully leave the past behind and move forwards, taking another step towards ending suffering, another step towards finding that perfect, unshakable freedom of the heart, freedom from greed, freedom from hatred, and freedom from confusion. Some 600 years after the Buddha spoke to the Kalamars, St. Paul the Apostle gave instructions to the Colossians, who were followers of Jesus. St. Paul said, "Put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Make allowances for each other's faults and forgive everyone who offends you. And above all of these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." Thank you all. And I hope to see you next week. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for sharing.